Hi, this is Kim with Scholarly Pursuits. I want to welcome you to my channel today. And during this segment, we're going to talk about a mock interview. Now, what is a mock interview, you may ask? A mock interview is just simply a practice interview. You want to practice before you actually do the interview. Now, sometimes you can get someone else to practice with you. You can get an experienced HR person if you have a family member or a friend that's worked in HR, or even if they haven't worked in HR, but they've done interviews and they're familiar with the interview process, then you would get somebody like that to interview you. But if you don't have that in your circle, then of course you could videotape yourself. You could just get your camera out, videotape yourself as answering a few questions. You'll look on the internet and Google, the most frequently asked interview questions, such as, why do you want this job? Why should we hire you for the job? What are your strengths and weaknesses? Those types of questions. What have you done recently that would make you a good candidate for the job? So there's a lot of kind of standard questions that are out there. And then you want to ask some questions that are specific to the job that you're applying for. So that's where I would start. First, who you would want to do the mock interview with, someone who is experienced in interviewing, right? Whether that be a supervisor or whether that be a friend or family member that could ask you the questions and give you some feedback on what would be a good response. That's where I would start. Now, we talked about what a mock interview is. It's just a practice interview, right? Now, how many of those should you do? I think you could get fatigued. First of all, the whole interview process is kind of scary and kind of intimidating and kind of frustrating to some degree for some people. It's just not a natural process to be interviewed and questioned about why you want a job, right? So it's good to practice just so that you're more familiar with the answers that you will give, that you've thought through different scenarios and different employment experiences that you have that you can draw on when you're asking questions about how to deal with a difficult customer. Well, maybe you haven't had a job where you dealt with a difficult customer, but you know somebody else that did, and you could share that story, right? So you want to draw on all these experiences, whether they be employment experiences or volunteer experiences, or even experiences in your personal life, right? They're just looking to see, they being the interviewer in the organization, how well you would fit into their organization, what skills that you would bring to the position. And a mock interview is just like a sports practice, right? It's an interview practice, an opportunity to go through the questions that you might be asked, look at your past experiences that would be applicable to this particular job interview, and then give you a more of a comfort when you actually are put into this situation where you're going to be doing the interview, right? So that's what a mock interview is. It's a practice interview. Who should do the interview with you? Someone who's experienced with interviewing or has interviewed someone in some capacity. And if not, then you'll want to do an interview yourself. Just either get in the mirror and practice answering questions, or videotape yourself and watch yourself respond to questions. Do you have a nervous twitch? You've seen me a few times move around in this video, kind of just trying to get comfortable. But you want to get comfortable before the interview starts, typically. And if you have a nervous twitch, kind of tie your hands down or something, or just try not to twitch during the actual interview. So the mock interview will kind of bear out those kinds of things that we do that we don't even think that we do, you know what I mean, or aren't even aware that we're doing. So then we talked about why you would do a mock interview, because practice makes perfect. You've heard the old saying, practice makes perfect. Same thing with interviewing. The more you can practice, the more comfortable and the more at ease that you'll come across during the interview. Then the other thing we want to talk about is the fact that now a lot of interviews are being done electronically. So that's another whole dynamic. Now, in a sense, it should make it easier because, you may have this panel of interviewers on WebEx or Zoom or MS Teams or Google Meets, whatever form they're using. But you got to make sure your home or the office or Panera Bread or wherever you're being interviewed at is presentable, right? You want to make sure that it doesn't look like a dorm room behind you, that you have some kind of quiet where there's not very many interruptions. within your environment so that you can professionally come across during your interview, right? So the setting of the interview is important, especially as it relates to these these virtual interviews, because a lot of them they're doing now are virtually. So you want to make sure the background is quiet and peaceful, and that um, that you can focus on the interviewers. The good thing about that is when you dress, most of the time they're just going to see from, the hips up. So you want to still make sure you dress for the interview, even if it's electronic, professionally. You want to come across in a professional manner. You want your demeanor and your answers to be very professional. And so even during the mock interview, you want to maintain that demeanor in the mock interview so that you practice just how you're going to play. Have you ever heard that? I used to play basketball and different sports, and they would always say, practice how you're going to play, because that's how you come across during the game, right? That's how you perform during the game. So in the mock interview, you want to practice how you want to perform during the actual interview. So you want to dress up during the mock interview. You want to take it very seriously. Now I'm smiling, and I'm only smiling because I did a mock interview. I've done several mock interviews, but I did a mock interview with my sister this week. And sisters, I have 4 sisters, and it was hard for us to maintain character, as I would say, because she would do something and I would just crack up laughing. And she was like, "What are you laughing at?" And she just is kind of humorous to me anyway, or I might be thinking about something, I don't know. It's just kind of hard to take your baby sister serious sometimes, but I had to maintain demeanor. So I had to get it back together so that we can make sure that as we practice, that she got out of the mock interview what she needed to get out of it. And she did receive a second interview. So I have to say the mock interview at least worked for the first interview, and I'll have to get back with you to let you guys know if she got the job or not. But she was successful at least getting the second interview. So I have to say our mock interview went well, but we did crack up at different times during the mock interview, and it was kind of funny, but we were able to get through what she needed to get through. I had pulled together some questions for the type of job that she was interviewing for, and then some of those standard questions, and then she was able to work through her answers with me, and I would say, yeah, that's good. Did you consider this? And by the time the mock interview was over, it was less than an hour that we talked through the mock interview questions. She felt much more comfortable. And she even came back and said that some of the questions that we went over were asked during the interview. And since she had already worked through her answers, she felt so much more comfortable and just could flow during the interview. So I say to you that a mock interview is a must when you're interviewing, whether you do it with yourself in the mirror, or if you do it on your camera and just interview yourself and just kind of go through the questions, or at a minimum review the questions. Make sure you dress the part during the mock interview and have that demeanor so that you practice, as like we say, like you practice like you play. So I wish you the best during your upcoming interviews. Make sure you have someone help prepare you with the use of a mock interview. I always like to leave you with some sort of resource. And so for this one, my resource for you would be Toastmasters. For many years, I was a member of the Toastmasters club here in town, and I was able to practice my public speaking skills. I was able to practice extemporaneous speaking and elevator speeches so that I'm much more comfortable kind of talking off the cuff. Now, you don't want to talk so much off the cuff during an interview, but you do want to feel more comfortable talking in a sort of unnatural scenario. And so I encourage you, if you're not a member of Toastmasters, or you know someone that could at least tell you some of the basics, or go on YouTube and look at some of the Toastmaster principles. And then the other thing I say, I've told you or share with you in other videos that I've done, that I'm a Christian. And so I do attend church regularly, but I grew up in the church. And in the church, we had to do plays. We got to do our memory verses. You could teach classes. So there were many, many opportunities to practice speaking and talking and getting up in front of people. So I always say to people, if you need help practicing your speaking or practicing talking to people, if that's not like a natural gift of yours, then church is a good place to do that. I mean, you're going for other things for sure, as a Christian, but it's also a good place to practice your speaking skills. And then, of course, Toastmasters are the things I'll leave you with. So if you found this information interesting or helpful, feel free to share, like, and comment. And feel free to share some of your mock interview experiences. Hopefully yours will be as fun as my sisters and I's word this week. This is Kim with Scholarly Pursuits. I look forward to talking to you during the coming weeks. Thank you so much for joining me, and take care.